what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. Another week, another bodybuilding show this weekend. This weekend we have the Everest Muscle Stars Poland Pro, which I believe is the first ever IFBB Men's Open show that they've done in Poland. So the competitor list just came out. It's a pretty deep competitor list. There's not a whole lot of like really standout big names, but there's a lot of guys that we've seen compete recently that have done pretty well. So I think it's going to be one of those shows where that top 4 or 5 guys or so is going to be very close. So here's the list. You've got David Balsarac, Brian Drago. I really like his physique. I'm going to show some of his updates here in a minute. Roberto Bonomo, Roman Fritz, Patrick Golimski, Ed Cargbo, Sahar Kazis, Amit Kosik, Paweł Kowalski, Damian Kuffel, who we just saw compete at this past weekend's Prague Pro. Josef Kvetin, who we just saw compete at this past weekend's Prague Pro. There are quite a few guys that competed in Prague this past weekend, but none of the top guys. No Martin, no Samson, no Keon. Mateusz Lewandowski, Pablo Lopez, who we just saw compete at the British Grand Prix, where he was in that call-out with Krizo. Karol Malecki, Reese McDonald, Masij Nabaglo, Derek Olara, who we just saw compete in Prague. Daniel Ponidzilak, Bartolomew Poplarzik, Joan Pradels, who just had a top 5 placing in Prague, Lucas Prekop, Andrea Presti, Vilius Sosnovskis, Jan Turek, who we just saw compete in Prague. I believe he was 6th. Akeem Williams, who we just saw at the Olympia, and Peter Wolniak. So I want to start with some of the standouts here for me first. So obviously I think that Joan Pradels in this lineup is a really clear standout. He was really impressive at the Prague Pro, undeniably so. He was close with Keon. Keon is still, 4th place placing at his open debut. I know some people were disappointed by that. I think it was still a good showing. Keon is still one of the best bodybuilders in the world. Joan Pradels was tied with Keon at prejudging for that 4th place spot and only lost by a point moving back into 5th. So he looked incredible at the Prague show. He was really, legitimately in that mix with Krizo, with Keon. And the Prague Pro was a really impressive lineup. Top 5 there. I think there was about 30 guys. And the guys that he was facing, like I said, tying with Keon, I think is a pretty big deal. So Joan is the real deal. He brought it. I have a feeling he's also going to bring it to this show. And like I said, with this Poland show, you don't really have a crazy standout here that's like, a top Olympian, a multiple-time show winner this year. There's nobody that really jumps out crazy. So my eyes are really drawn to Joan in this lineup. And I think when we're talking about who could be in that first call-out, who could be top 5, Joan is definitely at the top of my list here. Now, another guy that is really drawing my attention in this list is Andrea Presti. And that's because Andrea almost won 2 shows this year. The Flex Weekend Italy Pro in June, he was 2nd. Then also that China Pro earlier in June, he was 2nd. So narrowly missing the Olympia qualification this year twice with 2 runner-up positions. And I think when you think about his most recent showing in Italy, that was the one against Nexzilla Rubiel Mosquera. So he was 2nd at that show. And he looked pretty good at that show. I think the China Pro was a little bit more controversial with who should have won that show. But I think Andrea will probably be a factor here. He'll probably be first call-out. He'll probably be a top 5 guy. But I think it is worth noting that he hasn't won a show since 2023 when he won the Big Man Weekend. So it's been 2 years since he's won an Open Pro show. Now, of course, you also have Akeem Williams in this lineup, and you can never really count out Akeem. At the Olympia, he just competed a couple weeks ago. He was 16th, so he was in the tied for last place position, but he did win last year's Big Man Weekend in Spain to qualify for the Olympia, as well as the Toronto Pro Super Show in 2024. So I think Toronto qualified him for the 2024 Olympia, and the Big Man Weekend qualified him for this year's Olympia. And I was looking at the latest physique update he posted today, and again, you can never count him out. I mean, Akeem always looks gigantic. I don't know if I'm convinced that after the Olympia showing that we saw from Akeem, he's going to be a crazy big factor here. But he looks gigantic. He looks like he's in shape, so it's hard to ever bet against somebody like Akeem. But if I'm being honest, I thought the last place look that Akeem had at the Olympia this year was one of the worst versions of Akeem that we've seen. So I don't know. I don't know if like a lackluster Akeem is going to be able to beat, Joan Pradels and Andrea Presti if they're on here. And I think it's kind of wild to think about how long Akeem has been around. I was looking at his contest history earlier, and he's been competing in the IFBB since all the way back in 2014. And if you look back at the 2019 Olympia, that was the Olympia he was 9th. And then the 2020 Olympia, the first year of COVID, he was top 6 at the Olympia. So that was 5 years ago. He is getting older, but there's been shows and there's been times when Akeem has been a pretty significant factor. Maybe that's the case in Poland. Then you've also got Jan Turek, like I mentioned here. He just competed in the Prague Pro. He got 6th place there. Brought incredible condition to that show, just peeled to the bone. I think it was on the merit of that condition that he was able to crack that group and ended up standing up there in a call-out with Sampson, Martin, Keon, Crizzo, Joan. I think it's definitely a show like this where condition like that could be a factor because, again, I don't think there's really a crystal clear frontrunner here. I think this is going to be a close competition. And if you have some of these guys coming off like Akeem or like Andrea Presti, and you've got somebody just absolutely peeled out of their minds like Jan Turek, he could sneak in there. So I think we're shaping up to have a nice little battle at this show. And I think whoever's in that top 5, it's going to be close. Another name that really stands out to me here is going to be Edward Cargbo. Now, I was looking at his Instagram earlier, and I don't see any recent physique updates or really any mention that he's doing the show. He is on the list. His name's on the list. But I was looking at his Instagram, and I was reading some of the posts, and a lot of them were saying like he's going to compete next year to try to get to next year's Olympia. And granted, this is a qualifier for next year's Olympia. I just don't see any real mention of this show on his page. And again, he's on the list, but he's got a really impressive physique. We just saw him compete recently at the Europa Pro against Urs Kalasinski. He was actually top 3 at that show. Really impressive physique, a lot of size, very round, bubbly muscle. And honestly, when I rewatched this video of Ed from the Europa show, I really forgot how impressive he looked at that show. I mean, this is a pretty good look. Another guy that's standing out to me in this lineup, Pablo Lopez Munoz. He looked really impressive at the British Grand Prix last weekend. I guess it was almost 2 weekends ago, right? The weekend before this past weekend, the show that Michael Crizzo won. He was top 4 there. I thought he looked crazy impressive at that show. I thought he actually should have been higher than 4th, to be honest. He looked really impressive. Crazy delts, crazy upper body. His condition was on point. Just brought a really competitive look to that show. I don't believe he's ever won a pro show. He's only been competing as a pro since 2024. And he's definitely a guy that I would like to see finally get his first professional win. Because like I said, his upper body, his delts, his traps, just insane. And the final guy that I wanted to take a look at here from this list that really stands out is Brian Drago. We saw him compete 3 times so far in 2025. The Mr. Big Evolution, the Portugal Pro, he was 10th. He was 8th at the Flex Pro weekend in Italy. And his best placing of the year was 4th place at the M Pro Classic. And that was a pretty good top 4 that he was in there. You had Angel Calderon and Sas Harati. And I think that Drago probably will need a little bit more added size to be competitive in a lineup like this. You've got some monsters in this lineup here. But I think he's got a very aesthetically pleasing physique. I think we saw some pretty well-conditioned versions of his physique so far this year. And I think as far as young up-and-coming guys, he's definitely one of them to keep an eye on. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Going back over to the competitor list here, the standouts. So if I had to pick 5 guys for the top 5 here, I would probably go Jan Turek, Andrea Presti, Joan Pradels. I'd say Akeem should be top 5 here unless he's like way off. In the 5th guy, I'd go either Pablo or Ed Cargbo to round out that top 5. Pablo Lopez or Edward Cargbo. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Give me your predictions based on this competitor list for the Everest Muscle Stars Poland Pro this weekend. Again, I believe it's the first ever open show in Poland. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already, and as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.